sky, send us the sacred rain. Let the waters flow and bless our dry earth.
Hanging out of the window of a shaky, single-engine propeller plane in 1930, looking down at a scorched, miserable patch of the Peruvian desert, where it hasn't rained since the Middle Ages, and suddenly seeing a 300-foot hummingbird staring right back up at you. You rub your eyes, wipe the sweat off your forehead, and look again. Next to the bird is a giant monkey with a tail rolled up like a cinnamon bun. Down the hill, there's a giant round-headed figure waving at the sky like an awkward neighbor taking out the trash. You aren't hallucinating. You're looking at lines carved into the dirt that are so big you can only see them properly from thousands of feet in the air. The only problem? The people who made them lived 2,000 years ago. They didn't have airplanes. They didn't have helicopters. They didn't even have hot air balloons or tall ladders. They were completely grounded, walking around in sandals, carving giant pictures into the earth that they themselves could never actually see. Welcome to the Nazca Lines, the world's most frustratingly huge art project, built by an ancient civilization that apparently spent all its free time leaving giant notes for the sky. Before we figure out if these were ancient UFO runways or just the most extreme rain dance in human history, do me a quick favor. Hit subscribe button for Reality Unsealed. We break down history's weirdest glitches, oldest mysteries, and most unhinged human decisions with zero filter and maximum cynicism. Subscribe now, because if you don't, I'm going to come carve a giant monkey in your front lawn. For almost 1,500 years, millions of people walked right past the Nazca Lines without having any idea they were standing on top of masterpiece artwork. Imagine walking across a Mona Lisa painted on the floor, but you're so close to it that you just think you're standing on a dirty brown carpet. That's exactly what happened in southern Peru. If you stand on the ground in the Nazca Desert, you don't see a giant spider or a hummingbird. You just see a long, random trench in the dirt. It looks like someone dragged a heavy stick behind them while walking home. Spanish explorers wrote about finding strange paths in the desert back in the 1500s, but they just assumed they were old hiking trails or trade routes and moved on with their lives. It wasn't until the 1920s, when commercial airplanes finally started flying over Peru, that pilots looked out their windows and went, "Wait a minute, is that a giant bird down there?"
Wait! Is that a giant bird down there?
Think about how absurd that is. An entire ancient civilization spent centuries creating over 800 giant straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and 70 massive drawings of animals and plants across a patch of desert larger than the entire city of Chicago. And nobody realized what it was until we invented engine-powered flight.
Whenever people see something ancient that's really big, they immediately start screaming about aliens.
It's like hiding a secret message on the roof of your house that can only be read if your neighbor buys a drone 2,000 years later.
Humans are surprisingly capable when we're trying to talk to the gods.
Whenever people see something ancient that's really big, they immediately start screaming about aliens. Human beings couldn't have done this. Yes, we could. Humans are surprisingly capable when we're bored, scared, or trying to talk to the gods. The actual technique used to make the Nazca Lines is stupidly simple. You don't need a tractor. You don't need a laser beam from a spaceship. You just need a pair of hands, some wooden stakes, and a lot of patience. The Nazca Desert floor isn't made of golden beach sand. It's covered in a top layer of dark reddish-brown pebbles coated in iron oxide. But if you scrape away those dark stones, just an inch or two deep, you hit a lighter yellowish-white layer of lime and clay underneath. So, how do you draw a 300-foot monkey like the one pictured above without getting lost? It's basic geometry. The Nazca people took wooden stakes and thick cotton ropes to act as a grid. They placed a stake in the center, tied a rope to it, and walked in circles or straight lines to outline the design. Then, a crew of workers walked along the rope, picked up the dark stones, and piled them up on the edges of the line. That's it. That's the big secret. They didn't dig massive canyons. They just swept the dark pebbles off the rug to reveal the lighter floor underneath. Archaeologists have actually found the wooden stakes still stuck in the ground at the ends of some lines. Carbon dating proved those stakes were placed there around 500 CE. So unless extraterrestrials fly around the universe using wooden sticks and string, this was built by regular human beings getting dirt under their fingernails. If you sweep your driveway today, it's covered in dirt again by tomorrow afternoon. So why haven't these shallow 2-inch trenches been wiped out by rainstorms, sandstorms, or regular wind over the last 2,000 years? Because the Nazca Desert is basically a natural vacuum-sealed vault. It is one of the driest, hottest, and most lifeless places on the entire planet. It receives less than 0.4 of an inch of rain per year. That's not a rainstorm. That's a slight drizzle that lasts for 20 minutes every 12 months. On top of that, there is almost zero wind at ground level. The dark stones, absorbing the hot desert sun, create a cushion of warm air right above the ground. That warm air acts like a force field, deflecting the wind up and over the plateau. Because there's no rain to wash the lines away, no wind to blow sand into the trenches, and no plants or animals living there to step on them, the lines just sit there, frozen in time. The desert acted like a giant piece of Tupperware, preserving a gargantuan dirt drawing for 20 centuries. Hey, quick break from our desert excavation. If you're enjoying the fact that we're tearing apart giant ancient mystery drawings without resorting to boring textbook lectures, do yourself a huge favor and hit that subscribe button for Reality Unsealed. We're building a community of people who like their history weird, dark, and funny. It costs you $0, it takes 1 second, and it keeps us making these deep dives every single week. Hit the button. Let's get back to the giant drawings. The drawings, called geoglyphs if you want to sound fancy at a party, aren't just random scribbles. They are a literal zoo of creatures, many of which didn't even live in the desert where they were drawn. Take a look at the hummingbird above. It's over 300 feet long, longer than a football field. The wings are perfectly symmetrical, and the beak stretches out like a highway. Then you've got a giant spider, with a leg extended like it's reaching for something. A killer whale holding a human head. A condor, a pelican, and a monkey with a tail spiraling like a hurricane. Wait, a monkey? In a desert? Nazca is a coastal desert. Monkeys live hundreds of miles away in the humid Amazon rainforest on the other side of the Andes Mountains. That means the Nazca people had to trek across massive mountain ranges, see a monkey in the jungle, memorize what it looked like, trek all the way back to the desert, and then scale that memory up to the size of a city block without dropping the pencil once. And then, of course, there's the astronaut. Carved into a steep hillside near the flat plains is a 90-foot-tall human-like figure with huge, round, glowing eyes, boots, and a hand raised in an awkward hello gesture. Conspiracy theorists love this guy.
No one can explain this. This geoglyph is proof of alien visitation.
Wait, look up there!
They point at him and scream, "Look, it's an alien in a spacesuit waving at his crew." Archaeologists, on the other hand, look at it and go, "It's a guy wearing a mask, guys. Relax." The Nazca culture frequently wore ritual masks with giant owl eyes during religious ceremonies. But whether it's an owl man, a priest, or a cosmic visitor, standing at the base of a giant dirt man waving at you in the middle of nowhere is undeniably creepy. Now we get to the billion-dollar question. Why? Why would a culture spend decades of back-breaking labor carving giant animals into the dirt if they couldn't even stand back and admire their own artwork?
There is no water left. O sky, send us the sacred rain. Let the waters flow and bless our dry earth.
To understand why, you have to look at what the Nazca people were terrified of. They weren't worried about taxes or internet connection. They were worried about dying of thirst. The Nazca region went through massive, multi-decade droughts. Rivers dried up, crops withered, and entire villages starved to death. They were living on the edge of extinction, staring up at a cloudless, brutal blue sky every single day, praying for water. Modern archaeologists have walked these lines with high-tech equipment, and they notice something really interesting. The lines aren't just pictures. They are walking paths. The lines are continuous. That means you can enter the drawing at one point, walk along the outline of the hummingbird or the spider without ever crossing over a line, and exit at the other side. They were ancient labyrinth paths. Imagine a massive religious procession. Hundreds of people, dehydrated, desperate, and singing chants, walking in a single file line along the outline of a giant spider. Why a spider? Because in ancient Andean culture, spiders were associated with the arrival of rain. Why a hummingbird? Because hummingbirds appeared when flowers bloomed after a flood. They weren't making art for airplanes. They were drawing massive, physical prayers on the skin of the earth, so that their gods, who they believed lived in the sky and on top of the mountain peaks, could look down, see what they needed, and send water. It wasn't an airfield. It was a giant, dirt-carved SOS signal. The unhinged theories, alien runways, and ancient balloons. Because human beings hate simple, logical answers, people have invented some of the most insane theories to explain the Nazca lines. Let's break down the absolute worst ones. Theory 1. It was an alien UFO airport, popularized in the 1960s by a guy named Eric von Daniken in his book Chariots of the Gods. This theory claims the long, straight trapezoid lines, or runways, for alien spaceships. Why it's completely ridiculous. If you're an advanced alien species capable of traveling across light years of deep space through wormholes and anti-gravity propulsion, why on earth would you need a runway made of dirt and loose pebbles? Your ship doesn't have rubber tires like a Boeing 737. Also, if a heavy metal spaceship tried to land on soft desert soil, it would sink into the clay and crash instantly. Theory 2. Ancient Inca hot air balloons. In the 1970s, an explorer named Jim Woodman argued that the Nazca people must have built giant hot air balloons out of woven cloth and smoke to fly up and supervise the artwork from the air. He even built a crude balloon called the Condor 1 out of local materials to prove it was possible. Why it's completely ridiculous. Just because you can make a sketchy balloon out of smoke and cloth doesn't mean an ancient culture did. There is zero evidence in the archaeological record. No burn marks, no drawings of balloons on their pottery, no high-altitude flight gear, nothing. It's an overcomplicated solution to a problem that was solved with simple ropes and wooden sticks. Theory 3. It's a giant astronomical calendar. A famous mathematician named Maria Reich spent almost her entire life living in a small hut in the desert, sweeping the lines with a broom, arguing that every single line pointed to a specific star or solstice in the night sky. Why it's only partially true. While some lines do line up with the winter and summer solstices, computer models later analyzed all 800 lines and found that most of them point in completely random directions. When you have 800 lines pointing everywhere, a few of them are bound to point at a star purely by accident. The ultimate takeaway: the Nazca lines aren't proof of alien visitors. and they aren't proof of ancient high-tech flight. They are something much more human and much more tragic, a monument to human desperation. The Nazca people did everything right. They engineered incredible underground aqueducts called puquios that tapped into subterranean water tables. They adapted to one of the harsher environments on the planet. But when the climate shifted and the droughts lasted too long, their technology failed them. So they turned to art, ritual, and faith. They dragged ropes through the dust, cleared away millions of dark stones, and carved their hopes and fears into the crust of the earth, hoping the sky would show mercy. In the end, the sky didn't listen. The droughts got worse, the water ran out, and the Nazca civilization collapsed around 700 CE, disappearing into the dust. But the prayers they carved into the ground survived. They sat in silence for over 1,000 years, waiting for us to invent airplanes so we could finally look down and read the giant, desperate messages they left behind. We look at the Nazca lines today and wonder if aliens drew them, because we can't fathom spending that much energy on something that doesn't yield an immediate profit. But the Nazca culture reminds us that when humans are pushed to the absolute edge of survival, our first instinct isn't just to give up. It's to create something massive, beautiful, and impossible to ignore. Speaking of things built in extreme environments that make no sense, wait until you hear about our next case file. We're heading to the dark depths of the ocean to investigate the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old bronze device pulled from an ancient shipwreck that contains clockwork gear so advanced, scientists literally thought it was a fake planted by a time traveler. Make sure you're subscribed to Reality Unsealed so you don't miss that investigation. Hit that notification bell, drop a comment letting me know which Nazca drawing you'd carve in your backyard, and stop trusting internet theories about alien runways. See you in the next reality check.